What is going on, my beautiful people? I have something really special for you. We have finally released our Instagram DM profits. That is right. Listen, I'm super excited because this has been something that I've been leveraging in my business for the last 6 to 7 months, and I am finally comfortable with releasing it to the world. These strategies that I've got in this Instagram DM profits course is something that I've been working with my one-on-one clients on to help them grow and monetize their businesses. But now it is time to release it into the world and make it more accessible for more people. And so if you want to find out more ways to monetize your audience, doesn't matter the following, doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter how creative the content you got, but if you want to find a way to extract profit out of your followers, visit our website at www.instadmprofits.com. instadmprofits.com for more information. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. Go get it. Go to the website. Go check it out, baby. What is up, my beautiful people? Welcome to yet again another episode of the Pivot Mindset Podcast. My name is Justin. I am your host, and let's get into this. So in this episode, I want to talk about how to be so good that they can't ignore you. How to be so good that whoever you describe they is in your life, that they can't ignore you. I believe on the other side of all that we want to accomplish, it's about being good. It's about being so good that people can't ignore you, especially if you want to be and you're living this lifestyle to be a part of the top 1% or being a part of the top any genre or any vertical of any spaces, that you've got to do something to separate yourself. And I've started to learn and determine in my life what has been great separators for me. You got to be able to separate yourself from the crowd to be so good, right, that people can't ignore you. And there's so many benefits to being so good that people can't ignore you, in that really life becomes your oyster, and anything that you want to accomplish and anything that you want to be, you get to name your own price. You get to name your own number when it comes to that. And I'm not just talking about financially, but meaning you have the bargaining chip. When you're so good, you have something called leverage to be able to exercise that you can use at any point that you want to, because you are so good. I feel like I talk about LeBron so many times in our episodes, but those just some of the analogies that come to mind when I'm flowing through this. But for example, he is so good that he can, in essence, name his number to whatever organization that he wants to go to, and that is his price. And if you want LeBron, you pay to bring LeBron. Kevin Durant also does the same thing. There's probably 15 players in the NBA that's the top 1% of the NBA that are so good that people would pay whatever it is to get them there. Here's one, Deshaun Watson, very polarizing figure right now in the news and in the media, but he was so good at playing football, and his skills were so electrifying that he literally, I think it's like the number's like 60 women. He literally got like a civil suits that are raised up by around 60 women that says that he is doing inappropriate things to them. And the Cleveland Browns, I'm a Steelers fan, so it makes sense that this kind of organization would sign somebody like this, right? But the Cleveland Browns would literally sign a player because he was so good. They would look past all of that stuff and still sign him. I'm not saying that you being good gives you permission to be morally not sound, and I'm not placing guilt on him, because he could be totally not guilty for all the charges that are being pressed against him. But I'm just saying, from a conceptual perspective, when you're so good, people will gloss past your shortcomings, your failures, what you don't do well, because what you do well is so significant. And some of us really just have to lean more into what we do well, so that what we don't do well doesn't get so publicized, and it's not such a significant part of our lives. I'm definitely a person that says, hey, let's focus on, the things that I do and strengthen those, instead of trying to spend so much time in strengthening your cons. Like let's continue to just build on our pros, the things that we are really good at, and not necessarily just always try to focus on what can I do better, how do I build up my cons and the things that I struggle with. The people that we really celebrate in culture and society today, we really only celebrate them for one or two things that they do, right? It could be a sport that they play. It could be a song that they sing. It could be a portrait that they've painted, right? It could be the Picasso, right? It could be a song by your favorite artist that, like, man, there's that one song that everybody knows, right? It's typically only a couple of things that everyone becomes notably accepted and put on the pedestal from. And so in this episode, really, I want to really give you permission to be so good that people can't ignore you. And there's so many rewards to being so good. I just talked about some of them, but I want to provide you in this episode some things that have and is starting to serve me when it comes to shaping my life to be such a good person, not just like good with people, but whatever the life is that you're trying to build, how to be so good at it and so good at whatever it's going to take you to create that kind of life that no one can ignore you. Because when you get so good at something, you don't have to be perfect in your marketing. You don't have to look the part. You don't have to be great on social media. You don't have to be 6'3" and whatever the standard of measure for people in today's society. When you're so good, people will gloss past all of the other things that could be distractors on who you really are and what you're capable of. All right. So let's dive into the first one. The first way to be so good that people can't ignore you, and when you can be so good, you can name your price and you can do almost whatever you want to do, right? Is you first realize that results are the minimum commitment. Results are the absolute minimum commitment. Results are not the qualifier. The results are the thing that just gets you in the door. I realized this when I was playing college football. When I was playing college football, everyone there were the best in the schools that they had come from in high school. All the athletes were in the school newspaper. All the athletes were, the best in their school. All of them were like 4-year lettermen. All of them, was fast. All of them had speed. All of them could jump. All of them were really strong, right? So the things in one arena that separated you when you get to a different arena where the talent level is risen, that doesn't separate you anymore. That becomes the minimum commitment. And when it comes to the life that you want to build and really living a pivoted life, you've got to realize that the minimum that results and getting results are just the minimum commitment. That when it comes to being excellent, the results is just like the tip of the iceberg. And so it's first understanding that from an identity perspective, like I have to produce results. That it's all about the results. The results is at minimum what I've got to do. I've got to minimum have the results. Let's dive into the second one. The second one is that you have a significant skill set and or ability that the market and timing needs. This is a huge one. One of my mentors talks about, he says, the boat that you're in is more important than how hard you row in it. The boat that you're in is more important than how hard you row in it. Some of us can get so good at being basket weavers or being, selling trombone oil, right? These things that most people don't need. And you can be really good at it, but you're just in the wrong boat. If you get so good at selling newspapers in 2022, you could be the top 1% of whatever whatever you're selling in the newspaper arena, right? In whatever market you're in. But you're not going to be as successful and probably have the fruit as the person that is selling, that was selling toilet paper in the midst of COVID, right? Or you're not going to be as successful as the person that's selling electric vehicles in solar panels in 2022, right? Those are just different boats. And based on the boat that you're in, it will set really what kind of limit and what the capacity is for that space. It's almost like, people talk about, how athletes and teachers are paid differently, right? You can have an athlete, and that athlete, the minimum for NBA or maybe NFL, one of those, I think it's like 450 to 500,000. It's like the minimum salary for these athletes. These are athletes that aren't even probably touching the floor or touching the field. These are people that are just keeping the bench warm, right? They're bench warmers, they're water boys, but they're in a whole significant league, right? They're in a league that makes billions of dollars and work for teams that make billions of dollars every year. Because your school system doesn't make billions of dollars every year, right? And because the market value and how our society works doesn't incentivize that kind of capitalistic mantra in the school system, you only can pay teachers what the market demands in that space, right? So you could literally have the same skill set. Not saying that teachers and athletes have the same skill set, but I could be a teacher and really good at teaching people something, and I can leverage that skill in schools with children, or I can leverage that same skill working in corporate America, teaching successful salespeople how to be better at XYZ, right? And they make much more money. It could literally be the same skill set that I'm using. I'm just in a different arena, in a different genre. So it's not to like downplay teachers or anything like that, but it's just a microcosm of what happens in the grand scheme of things, right? And so the boat that you're in is really important. Make sure that you're in a boat, you're in a genre, you're in an arena, that you have upward mobility, and that people, that the market and timing actually needs. And here's the other piece, is that to create significant skill set, you also have to put your 10,000 hours into your craft, right? What it is to put your 10,000 hours into just being excellent at that thing. We talk about outliers and what it takes to be an outlier. It's really building a skill set and really building a tool set about putting time in. This podcast for me is one of those things that I'm just putting my time in, guys. Like this podcast is, I think, around 6-7 months at this point. And for me, this is something that I want to do, and I leverage it as a platform. But this podcast doesn't make me tons of money. Like, I'm not doing it for the money necessarily. I'm doing it because I'm putting in my 10,000 hours. I'm doing it because I get the chance to practice and frame up my thoughts and communicate them to people at large. I'm doing it because it's a medium that allows me to become better at communication, become better at structuring my thoughts and all that kind of stuff, right? And so for me, I do believe that this podcast is going to have massive success, and it's going to be a global podcast, and there's going to be tons of people that connect with the messaging, and that this grows into a huge community. But I understand that I got to put my 10,000 hours in. And often we want the thing before we really dedicated ourselves to the minimum commitment that thing requires. And, a lot of the people that are great, they put their 10,000 hours in, right? So you have to have significant skill set and an ability that the market and the timing needs right now. So that's one of how to be so good. Got to make sure that you're being good in a thing that actually matters, in essence, okay? Number 3 is you don't just create what you want to sell, but you create only what people want to buy. This is a really good one, especially for my entrepreneurs, is we get out of the widget creating business for the sake of just creating a widget, but we test our market, we do research and learn, what do people already want to buy? Instead of just creating something that I can sell and I really am passionate about, and it excites me and it fires me up and it ignites me, that's not how you should make decisions when it comes to really being valuable in the marketplace. The way you should make decisions when it comes to being valuable in the marketplace, the easier way is to learn what people already want and just give them that thing. Is to understand what people's pain points are, their challenges are, what they're trying to accomplish, the things that's hindering them from getting there, and be a problem solver. And so becoming a problem solver and being a solutionary is really an element of how to be so good that people can't ignore you, is really being a solutionary. You can be, again, so good at things that don't matter to people, and will clap you up, but it won't drive significant results and action and movement in the world that we live in today. And so to be so good that people can't ignore you, you have to create something that people actually want. You have to be something that people actually want. Right. And you have to really embrace what that is and do your best to fulfill that, and become a problem solver and be that solutionary. All right, we're moving on. So here's the 4th one. The 4th one is you take on the identity of the thing completely. You take that on as your identity. That thing doesn't become separate from you, but it becomes who you are. I can correlate this to what it is to be like an actor, and how an actor would take on a role completely, especially if you have actors that are playing parts of real people, right? So you think of I think it was Jamie Foxx did Ray Charles, and Will Smith did Muhammad Ali, and there's tons of them. I'm sure I'm missing tons that probably come to mind to you guys. But when it came to the people that were really successful, Jennifer Lopez played Selena, right? When it comes to people that were really successful at this in depicting and being that person, is they studied that person and they took on the identity of that person. What we hear often in interviews when actors were playing other people on how like they lived where they lived, they ate the kind of food they ate, they hung around that person's family, they like just embodied and embraced what it was to completely be that person. So much so that their identity becomes almost identical to that person, because you could literally, based on looking at somebody's actions and what they do, you can almost duplicate somebody. The best way to clone somebody is to learn everything that they do and just do that and just be that. So so when people say there's no such thing as a clone, like there's a bunch of clones out there, right? The way you could clone, something is not in essence genetically, but you could, literally write your own story by just learning what already works and becoming that. And so you have to take on an identity of that thing completely. And so treat it as an acting role. Maybe you want to be a CEO. Maybe you want to be, you may want to plant a church, or maybe you want to live completely free on a private island and be rich, and like whatever your thing is, whatever you want to do, right? You have to take on that identity completely and block out everything else that is not the identity of that. If you want to be a basketball player, you have to learn, what do basketball players do? If you want to be a CEO, you got to learn, what does it take for CEOs to get there? How do they get master's degrees? Do they get doctoral degrees? How much time do they normally spend at companies before they are able to climb that ladder and get to that role? Do they own a P&L? You have to really understand, what is the identity of the thing? This could be controversial, but to me, you have to also be the part, right? Like there is the human element, and people want often the cover to look like, they want the cover of the book to indicate what's actually in the book. And so if the cover of my book said that this was on, the 10 keys on how to be successful, and then in the book I only talked about how to fly a kite, and I talked about really good details on flying kites and all that kind of stuff, and had nothing to do with being successful, then you get a disconnect. So you got to be what the package suggests you to be. And so some people, right, like if you want to shrink time, you would just become that person. Maybe if you want to be a CEO, you have to learn what it is to be a better communicator. You may need to understand what it is to fulfill true leadership and to really lead people that don't think, act, or pray like you, right? Or whatever it is you want to accomplish, it's about taking on the identity of that thing and just being that, transforming yourself to be someone that you are not right now. In the last podcast, we talked about what it is to be more. If you want to do more in your life, it doesn't start with just taking more action. It starts with being more as a person. It starts with understanding, how do I expand my capacity? How do I expand who I am? And how do I just become more? How do I become more valuable in the marketplace? How do I become more essential? Like whatever that thing is that you want, it's not about striving, it's about becoming. And so in this essence, really how to be so good that people can't ignore you is it really comes down to taking on the identity of what it really means to do that thing. Right, like today, and this is something that I feel like I'm in the transition of right now. I'm in my studio recording this podcast, and it's 90 degrees outside, and everyone could have the excuse to be hanging out at a pool or be outside having fun, throwing food on the grill, whatever that is. Like I've taken on that identity that I don't get the chance to do those things, because that the people that are going where I'm going, they don't do that in the space that I'm in right now. Like when they're in this building phase, they don't do that kind of stuff. They do that after they've hit the finish line, right? And so I've just taken on that identity. And so I don't necessarily miss it, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything, because I've just embraced what it is to be that. I embraced, that when it comes to accomplishing, what I want to accomplish, that there will be sacrifices, and that I won't be able to be the person of old and get a person of new, or that I won't be able to change my results without being a different person. And so being okay with endeavoring to be a different person is absolutely your right. And I want to give you the courage, the freedom, and the confidence to go out today and be so good that people cannot ignore you. Everything that you want is on the other side of being so good, right? Like no one is going to give you a handout. Stop expecting handouts. Don't expect people to just hand you over your life, your dream, your destiny, all that kind of stuff. You're going to attract it by being so good that people can't ignore you. By being so good that you're going to just create steam. You're going to create momentum. You're going to create buzz because you're so good at what you do that you don't have to wave your hand and say, hey guys, here I am. But people will be sharing you. People will be reposting you. People will be following you because you're so good that you cannot be ignored. And so what is that thing for you in your life? I'm curious. Like, what is the thing for you that, man, like your life would significantly change if you were so good at it? Is there a skill set? Is there an ability? Is there organization? Like what is it for you that your life, you like if you focused on it and if you build your skill set on it, that you would be so good that people wouldn't be able to ignore you? I'm going to refresh them. The first one is how to be so good that they can't ignore you. The first one is results is the minimum commitment. The second one is you have a significant skill set or ability that this market and timing needs. The third one is you don't just create what you want to sell, you create what people want to buy. And then the fourth one is you take on the identity of that thing completely. You take it on, that becomes your identity completely. And so if you want to be a separator, if you want to separate yourself, I hope that this gives you some value. I hope that this gives you some encouragement and some strategy to really like continue to revise and revamp and become the best version of yourself. Because remember here, guys, we believe that life is all about the pivots, right? And those who decide to make those pivots, like it comes with success. Like when you decide that I'm going to make the adjustment, that's when you finally hit your strike zone, is being okay with making those tweaks, with course correcting, with going on your journey and say, I don't like that anymore. Let me switch that, right? And so this whole podcast is about giving you that kind of permission, all right? And so that's all I got for you today. Please continue to give this podcast a rating. Continue to give it a review. All of your support is super appreciated. Whether you're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you are checking this podcast out, I appreciate. And remember, life is all about the pivots, and those who decide to make the pivots decide to become successful. Peace.